Do you believe that an incense bowl placed in the middle of an ancestral altar can suddenly burst into flames without anyone lighting it? Do you believe that within its ashes lies the soul of someone whose name was never written in the family's genealogy? This strange story took place in a coastal village in central Vietnam, where, for generations, the villagers have avoided speaking of a certain name, Laon. On the night of the ancestral death anniversary that year, as the entire family was preparing the ceremonial offerings, the incense bowl in the center of the altar suddenly glowed bright red, then erupted in flames as if it had been soaked in gasoline. Relatives panicked to put out the fire. Adults' hands trembled. Children screamed in terror. But what was even more horrifying was that in the ashes remained an object no one in the family dared to claim. And that was only the beginning of a series of terrifying, haunting events that followed. In this episode, you will hear about the woman in white who appears every ancestral anniversary night, a burnt, eyeless doll, a curse that was never lifted, and a secret buried across 3 generations, hidden inside the family's genealogy book. Have you ever witnessed with your own eyes an incense bowl bursting into flames on its own? No incense, no candles, not a single spark nearby. Yet in the most sacred space of an entire lineage, the ancestral hall, a blaze erupted. Bright and intense, then died down as coldly and eerily as it came. This is no superstition. This is a true event that happened during the most solemn death anniversary of the Nguyen family in Hoa Ki village. That ancestral house stands within an old garden, completely isolated from the residential area. The elders of the village say it used to be the site of a house that burned down. After the Great Fire long ago, the land was cleared, and a new ancestral house was built. People believed the fire had erased the past, all things that should not be spoken of. But it seems, fire only burns matter. Resentment and injustice cannot be erased so easily. That night, incense smoke filled the altar room. The scent blended with the chanting, with the flicker of oil lamps. The clan elder was preparing to begin the ceremonial prayer when a dry pop suddenly echoed. Everyone turned in shock, just in time to see the fire erupt from the largest incense bowl on the altar, the one in the center. No one understood what had happened. The fire roared, spreading to the offerings. Fruits tumbled, eggs cracked, sticky rice scorched. Shouts and hurried footsteps filled the room in chaos. People tried to douse the flames using towels and water from a large clay jar outside the hall. Strangely, the fire didn't spread. It burned only the incense bowl, then died down on its own, as if it had just completed a mission. Everyone froze. In the newly cooled ashes, something small emerged, no bigger than a palm, but it chilled the entire room by several degrees. It was a silver necklace, blackened and half-burnt. The pendant was shaped like a butterfly, with the initials LO engraved on the back. No one in the family recognized it, and no one had a name matching those letters. The clan elder's face turned pale. He stood in silence for a long while, then ordered the necklace wrapped in a red cloth and locked away in the altar drawer without saying another word. That night, no one dared stay at the ancestral house to keep the incense burning like every year. The children were taken home early. The adults packed up in silence, praying non-stop, then returned to their houses. Only the clan elder and his youngest son remained to lock the door. However, as they turned to leave, the youngest son froze. The wooden gate leading out of the ancestral house, which had been left open earlier to welcome guests, suddenly shut tight. The old bronze padlock clattered to the ground. They looked at each other in silence. No one dared to step forward. The next morning, when they returned to clean up, everyone noticed that a section of the wall behind the altar had been stained pitch black by smoke. But what was even stranger was that the stain resembled the silhouette of a woman standing sideways, with long hair cascading down, one arm across her chest, the other hanging limp at her side. No one said a word, but everyone exchanged strange glances. That evening, the clan elder quietly searched through a drawer and found a faded old photo. It was the only remaining photograph from the fire years ago, when the current ancestral house had been just a small home. In the photo, a young woman is holding a baby, standing next to a pile of blackened rubble. The faces are unclear, but when the photo was placed next to the necklace, he shivered. The pendant was shaped like a butterfly, exactly the same. And on the back of the photo, a faint handwritten line. For Laone, the girl who had no place to return to. So someone had once lived, and died, right there. With no identity, no altar, no one ever speaking her name. And now, she had come back, in her own way, to reclaim her existence. But the story doesn't end there. Because just a few nights later, the sound of crying echoed at midnight from the corner of the ancestral yard. And the second incense bowl also began to crack. After that fateful night of the blazing incense fire, Hoaki village fell into a strange and gloomy atmosphere. No one spoke of it, but everyone could feel the ancestral house was no longer the same. Something invisible had awakened with the flames that night. Something cold, light, yet lingering around the house like the silent breath of a wandering soul that had never been set free. 4 days later, the sky suddenly poured heavy rain. Rain washed out the red dirt road leading to the ancestral house. Mr. Kai, the youngest son of the clan elder, was assigned to bring offerings and light incense again for the ancestors. As he stepped into the yard, he stopped in his tracks. The Barringtonia tree beside the outdoor altar seemed to have had its leaves freshly plucked. At its base was a long streak of water, not like rainwater, but like someone's tears had just fallen, drop by drop. Mr. Kai quietly opened the door to the ancestral house. Cold wind rushed out from inside, even though the weather outside was muggy. As he stepped in, he suddenly felt chills running down his spine. He wasn't sure if it was the wind, or the feeling that someone was standing somewhere, staring straight at him. Not a sound, not a breeze, only the lingering scent of old incense smoke, like the breath of someone who hadn't yet passed on. Mr. Kai lit 3 sticks of incense and was about to place them into the center incense bowl when suddenly, he heard footsteps behind him. Soft, very soft, but just enough to make his hairs stand on end. He spun around. No one. The ancestral hall was completely empty. But something was still there. In the left corner, right where the wall had been blackened by smoke on the day the incense bowl caught fire. He stared directly at that corner, and for a brief moment, it felt like his heart stopped beating. There was a figure, hazy like smoke, faceless, shapeless, but that posture, that long flowing hair, that way of leaning as if holding something close, there was no mistaking it. It was the very image that had appeared on the smoke-stained wall the other day. But now, it wasn't just a mark. It was a form, cold, alive, and it was slowly turning its head. Mr. Kai jolted, dropping the bundle of incense he was holding. The incense sticks went out instantly, as if someone had blown on them. He staggered backward, tripping over a brick step behind him, nearly falling, and at that very moment, a chilling sound rang out in the silence. A cry, distant, yet clear, as if echoing from deep beneath the earth. That cry was not angry, not vengeful, but filled with sorrow. Despair, like a woman holding a pain too deep to put into words. Panicked, Mr. Kai ran out of the ancestral house, locked the door in haste, not daring to look back. But as he reached the end of the alley, he suddenly heard a soft voice behind him. "Don't lock it, I haven't left yet." That night, he developed a high fever, delirious, muttering one name over and over. "Own, Laone. Don't stand there anymore." The family members who heard the story were all shaken. The clan elder said nothing. He simply reached into the drawer and took out the necklace from the other night. The necklace was no longer blackened, but now shimmered with a faint cold silver glow, as if the forgotten soul was slowly returning, little by little. That night, a child in the family dreamed of a woman knocking on the window, smiling and saying, "Little one, do you see your mother? I've been waiting for you at the corner, where no incense is ever burned." Upon waking, the child suddenly shouted, "To the left of the altar, there's still someone who hasn't been prayed for." That sentence sent chills down everyone's spine. And from that night on, whenever evening fell, anyone who stepped into the ancestral house would hear crying from the left corner, lingering, thin like smoke, cold like ashes not yet cooled. But that was only the beginning, because just a few days later, a strange object was discovered under the altar table. A scorched doll, with no eyes. Everything seemed to quiet down after the echoing cries from the left corner of the ancestral hall. But the members of the Nguyen family still felt something, unsaid. As if that soul was still waiting for someone to uncover the truth. All eyes began to focus on that smoke-darkened wall corner, where Mr. Kai had once seen the silent woman standing. No one dared speak of it, but everyone made an effort to avoid stepping too close when offering incense. Because the chilling presence still lingered, like a gaze from somewhere unseen. That day was set aside for cleaning, preparing to repair the roof of the ancestral house. A few children in the family were tasked with cleaning out the wooden drawers beneath the altar. A boy named Hoang, about 8 years old, while crawling under the table looking for a broom, suddenly pulled out something soft, scorched, and smelling burnt. When brought into the light, all the kids screamed in terror. It was a cloth doll, eyeless, with clumps of hair burned away, and a dress tattered and stained, as if it had just escaped a raging fire. The adults gathered around. The clan elder took the doll in both hands, his face turning pale as he looked closely at the torn seam on the side of the dress. There, stitched into the old fabric, was a tiny piece of partially burnt paper. The paper still bore a line of handwritten text in smudged brown ink. "I am not in the family register, but I am the flesh and blood of this lineage. Do not forget." He said nothing. Silently, he put the note into his pocket and instructed everyone not to mention this matter to anyone outside the family. But from that day on, every night, he lit 3 sticks of incense and bowed precisely toward the left side of the altar, the spot where the doll had just been found. Anyone who looked into his eyes saw fear, a deep and haunting sorrow, as if he were carrying the weight of a sin that the family had tried to bury for too long. One stormy night, the ancestral roof leaked, and water dripped onto the tiled floor. Mr. Kai returned to cover the offerings. But before he could enter, he heard a tapping sound coming from beneath the altar. At first, he thought it was a cat, but the taps were rhythmic, 3 knocks at a time, unmistakable. He slowly walked closer, bent down, and this time, he saw something strange. The doll was no longer on the plate. It had been flipped over, face down on the cold tiles, as if someone had turned it during the night. When he bent down to pick it up, he noticed another torn edge on the doll's dress, revealing another small slip of paper inside. The second note, written in the same shaky but emotional handwriting, read, "I don't need an altar. I just want to be called by my name once, before the ancestors, so my child won't be seen as cold-blooded." Mr. Kai collapsed to his knees, holding the doll in his arms like a child. In that moment, for reasons he couldn't explain, he burst into tears. Hot tears streamed down onto the cold tiles. The rain outside pattered steadily, but inside his heart, a storm raged. If the words in the letter were true, it meant the Nguyen family had once had a child who had been denied simply for being born of an illegitimate bloodline. And the woman who died in that fire was not a stranger. The next morning, at an emergency family meeting, Mr. Kai proposed something that stunned everyone: to set up a separate incense bowl, just a small one, placed on the left side of the ancestral altar, with no name engraved. No photo attached, just a single line inscribed. The one not recorded in the genealogy. The clan elder sat in silence for a long time, then nodded. No one objected, but everyone understood. That decision meant acknowledging that in the past, someone had been left behind in the flames. And now, that soul was waiting for something to be made right. That night, when incense was first placed into the new bowl, the family was astonished to see the smoke rising was no longer cold gray, but a soft white, light, smooth. It drifted toward the ceiling like a flowing silk ribbon. No more crying, no more shadows in the left corner, only the faint scent of sandalwood and the soft laughter of a child behind the altar. But that peace only lasted 3 nights, because on a dim moonlit night afterward, a stranger came asking to offer incense. A woman, around 50, with silver hair, wearing a brown shirt, her hands trembling as she held a small scorched fabric pouch. When she opened the pouch, she took out a red notebook. The cover was torn, but inside was the name of a child, crossed out. And beneath it, a handwritten line: not eligible for registration. The silver-haired woman stepped into the ancestral house in a silence so heavy it chilled the air. No one knew who she was, and no one dared to stop her. Her eyes looked at no one, only pausing for a long moment at the new incense bowl placed at the left corner of the altar. She bowed down, touching the incense bowl as if touching the flesh of her own kin. Not a single stick of incense was lit, yet the entire room was suddenly filled with a strangely familiar scent. The smell of sandalwood smoke with a hint of burning. The scent of long-dried tears. The clan elder sat above, his hands clutching the armrests, trembling. When the woman opened the tattered red book, the entire ancestral room fell into silence. The first page bore the familiar words: genealogy of the Nguyen family, Hoa Ki village. But on the third page, a name was crossed out in thick black ink. Beneath that name, a shaky note read: not permitted to be added to the genealogy, mother unknown. The woman spoke in a hoarse voice that still echoed through the entire room. She did not cry, but each word cut like a blade through memory. I am La Own. I do not ask to be recorded. I do not ask to be accepted. I only ask for one thing. Do you know? When my child died, he had never once been called a grandson of this family. No one replied. All eyes looked down. An elder in the family began mumbling prayers, trying to appease the soul that now sat among them. La Own pulled a small item from her cloth bag. It was a piece of a child's clothing. One corner burned black, but still embroidered clearly with the words: ancestors are roots, children are blood. She gently placed it into the clan elder's hand, then turned and walked away. She did not ask permission, did not say goodbye. The ancestral door closed behind her, softly, but heavily, like a bell tolling from the past. That night, the clan elder quietly went to the old back room behind the ancestral house, once used to store offerings. The room was covered in dust, sealed tight, long unused. But he remembered clearly, years ago, right there, a woman had knelt before him, begging to have her unborn son accepted into the family. He had refused. The reason was simple. no marriage certificate. No man acknowledged as the father. The Nguyen lineage had always followed the same rule. Clan law did not allow for the recording of a child without a clear origin. The woman knelt, pregnant, for 3 days and nights before the ancestral gate. The sky poured heavy rain, flooding the brick steps. The child in her womb could not survive. She gave birth prematurely under the cold eaves, and no one dared to approach. People said she was bad luck, irrelevant. The baby died after only 1 hour of breath. No name, no burial cloth, and afterward came a mysterious fire. The thatched house where she had been staying, next to the ancestral land, burst into flames. Some said it was caused by candles. Others whispered she had set herself alight. But some murmured it was lit to cleanse the impurity. No one investigated. No one spoke. That death was buried in ashes along with forgotten stories. But no one expected that nameless child, that mother with no grave, had left behind a curse that would haunt 3 generations. The next morning, the clan elder stepped into the ancestral courtyard and summoned all family members. His voice was no longer stern as usual. It was filled with anguish and bitterness. Our ancestors taught us to uphold tradition. But what kind of tradition is more cruel than fire? Today, the Nguyen family must pray to someone not in our books, must offer to someone not on any stone, and must apologize to someone who once called this place home. The silent ritual took place at noon. A small offering tray, a bowl of plain rice, a cup of water, a pinch of salt, and a second incense bowl placed beside the main ancestral bowl. No one spoke. They only quietly lit incense. When the incense finished burning, a light breeze swept through the ancestral house, lifting the scorched piece of fabric into the air before it gently landed between the 2 incense bowls. On that cloth, the silver thread, ancestors are roots, children are blood, shimmered, as if newly embroidered. But just when everyone thought the matter was resolved, that night, a family member, Mr. Kai's uncle, discovered a new black mark under the altar. Not smoke, but a fresh burn, round, the size of a hand, as if someone had just pressed a scorched hand down and left a print. And the next morning, Mr. Kai found in his family drawer a charred silver ring. Engraved on the face were 2 strange words. Amon, spirit's grievance. It seemed, after the apology ritual to Laon, everything within the Nguyen family would settle down. But no one realized that the moment the second incense bowl was established, a deeper, heavier secret had begun to rise from beneath the ashes. 3 days after the offering, Mrs. Hoa, the caretaker who held the key to the ancestral house, discovered something strange in the offering water bowl near the altar. The water had changed color, not murky from dust, but as if a faint silver sheen floated on top. When she reached in to change the water, she noticed a round mark inside the bowl, round like a coin. But when she turned the bowl upside down, there was nothing beneath. She reported the incident to the clan elder. At first, he thought it was coincidence. But that night, he dreamed of a child, around 6 or 7 years old, clutching the hem of his shirt and sobbing. The child didn't speak, didn't smile, only stood there, in the pouring rain, beneath the eaves of the ancestral house, shivering and drenched. Sensing something was wrong, the head of the family invited a spiritual master from a neighboring village. This man wasn't a stranger. He was a 5th-generation descendant of a monk who once resided in an old pagoda that had burned down half a century ago. The moment the master stepped into the ancestral house, he said nothing. He simply bowed respectfully before both incense bowls. But as he turned to the smaller one, the one recently placed for the spirit of Laon, he paused. He said that within this bowl resided not just one spirit, but 2. One was a woman, whose bitterness had begun to fade. The other, colder, smaller, was a child. A soul that had never been named, never acknowledged as human, a tiny spirit abandoned before it had a full day to breathe in this world. The clan elder turned pale. His hands trembled slightly as his gaze drifted toward the wall. No one spoke, but everyone understood. If Laon was the forgotten mother, then the child was the silent blood never called son. A soul who had wandered nameless and rootless, buried in the cold ashes of incense for decades. The master said the mother's anguish was fading, but the child's spirit clung to the ancestral house. Not for revenge, but waiting to be called, my child. That night, Mr. Kai, who had been there the night of the fire, returned to the ancestral house in silence. In his hand was a silver ring engraved with the words, Soul's Grievance. Found days earlier in a drawer, the ring's design was ancient, traditionally used in symbolic ghost marriages. It confirmed what many had suspected. Laon had once been promised a wedding. But the man, to preserve the family's honor, had denied her. The child born had no name, no place, no recognition. Mr. Kai sat alone, placing the ring next to the incense bowl, and quietly wept. His tears made no sound, but each drop struck the cold tile like a confession that had waited too long. He whispered, "If you're still here, if you can still hear me, please forgive the father who lacked the courage to claim you." That night, the sky turned black despite the absence of clouds. The ancestral house felt as if wrapped in a heavy mist. But then, something unexplainable happened. At midnight, a baby's cry echoed through the speaker in the prayer room, a speaker that had never once been used. The sound was clear, like the voice of a newborn taking its first breath. It lasted only seconds before falling into silence. No one moved. The next morning, Kai's granddaughter, Little Man, awoke and said, "I dreamed of a baby playing in the house. He didn't have a name and asked me, 'Can I be called Min?' No one in the family had ever chosen that name. But Laon had once whispered to Mr. Kai, 'If it's a boy, I want to name him Min. I just hope his life can shine a little brighter than mine.' And so, the child finally had a name. That evening, for the first time in the family's history, a naming ceremony was held for a spirit never written into the family registry. The small incense bowl was no longer a vessel of pain. It became a space where both mother and child, even in death, could be known. But one thing went unnoticed. That night, as the family bowed before the altar, a shadow glided silently across the rafters. It wasn't the mother, it wasn't the child, it was a third figure, the one who had once set the fire. That night, peace finally seemed to settle over the family. But just as they exhaled relief, something strange occurred. It wasn't a dream, it wasn't a vision, it happened in flesh and bone. Under the pale moonlight, Mr. Hao, the caretaker of the ancestral house, had a habit of sleeping there on full and new moons. After checking the incense bowls, he locked the large wooden door and lay down on the wooden platform to rest. Around 2 a.m., he was startled awake by the sound of something heavy dragging across the courtyard tiles. Thinking it was a stray cat, he peeked through the curtain and nearly dropped his oil lamp. In the center of the courtyard, a shadow sat motionless beside the outdoor altar. It didn't move, didn't speak, didn't look up, it just sat, head bowed, hands on knees, like someone waiting, or someone who had been waiting a long time. Mr. Hao rushed to open the door, but the latch was broken. The door wouldn't budge. His palms turned clammy. That door, reliable for decades, had suddenly become sealed shut. He turned back to look. The figure still sat there, but now, its head had tilted, as if listening. The wind rustled the palm leaves. Crickets chirped, but there was another sound, footsteps. slow and deliberate, approaching from the outer gate. Then it happened. From the rear wall of the house, an unusual darkness began to spread. It wasn't a shadow, it looked like a thick curtain of smoke, creeping upward toward the altar. Mr. Howe clutched the oil lamp, murmuring prayers, but the words felt swallowed by the air. He closed his eyes and prayed it was all a dream. When he opened them, the figure was gone. Before dawn, he finally drifted off to sleep, but a loud knock jolted him awake. Family members had arrived to prepare the morning offering. They were shocked to find the door tightly shut, even though Mr. Howe was already inside. The door had to be forced open. Behind it was a dark handprint burned deep into the wood. No one asked questions, no one gave answers, but during the ritual, little man pointed to the ceiling and asked, "Grandpa, why didn't the man in the yard look at me today?" All eyes followed her finger. There, on the wooden beam, was a smoky stain, a shadow shaped like a man hunched in sorrow. That morning, Mr. Kai brought the clan elder a newly discovered item from the old storage room, an old registry book. Its pages faded. On the last page was a partially erased name, Van Phuc. It was the name of the clan elder's youngest son, once a close friend of Laon, rumored to be the father, and the man who vanished the night of the fire, leaving no trace. No one spoke of him again. No one searched, until now, when the shadow in the yard had returned. Not once, but 3 times in a week. Still, silent, waiting, not just for Laon, not just for the child, but for the one who once held the match. And when the old registry revealed his name again, the weight of 3 decades came crashing down. Because now, every door to the past had been opened, and there was no hiding anymore. For 3 consecutive nights, Mr. Kai dreamed the same dream. In it, he entered the ancestral house on a moonless night, the altar room cold and silent, save for the faint sound of a child softly crying. When he reached the middle of the courtyard, he saw a man in a brown shirt, disheveled hair, sitting with his back to him on the cold tile floor. The man did not move or speak. Only when Mr. Kai approached and placed a hand on his shoulder did the man turn around. It was a face he knew all too well. Phuc, his younger brother, who had disappeared years ago. The face hadn't changed, but the eyes were no longer those of the living. They were sunken, filled with a haunting gaze that seemed to hold both ashes and embers within. Phuc did not accuse him. He only asked one question. "Brother, did you ever believe me?" The question repeated 3 times across 3 nights, and each time he awoke, Mr. Kai was drenched in sweat. His throat parched, and his left hand ached as if it had touched burning coal. On the 4th night, when he returned to the ancestral house to offer incense for the departed, he brought with him an object no one else in the family had ever seen, Phuc's handkerchief, passed down to him by their mother before her death. Embroidered on it were 3 small names, La, Min, Phuc. As the incense began to burn, before he could recite a single prayer, a cold gust of wind swept across his neck, sending chills down his spine. The main door, which had been firmly shut, suddenly flew open. In the dim moonlight, he clearly saw a man standing in the courtyard, holding a scorched shirt. It was Phuc. The face was not disfigured. No blood, but it was stiff as stone. His eyes unblinking, his lips unmoving, only his hands trembled slightly, as if offering the shirt. Mr. Kai stepped off the threshold, intending to approach, but the figure retreated. With each backward step, a scorch mark appeared on the tiles, burning hot like someone had placed a pan of embers. When he reached the outdoor altar, Phuc stopped and pointed to the left wall of the ancestral house, the place where Laoan's shadow had once appeared. When Mr. Kai looked, something strange emerged. Beneath the old, moldy surface of the wall, 3 handprints appeared, one large, one small, a mother's, a child's, but just below them, a third handprint, larger, clearer, overlapped the two, as if shielding, embracing them. The 3 handprints slowly faded. Like cooled ash, Fook turned and walked away, saying nothing, only a whisper drifted on the wind. Don't let your son bear the burden of his father's sins again. That night, Mr. Kai sat before the altar until dawn. In his hand was a birth certificate never before acknowledged, the original copy kept hidden by their mother, clearly naming the father of Min, Nguyen Van Phuc. A long-buried truth had risen. The next morning, Mr. Kai called an unprecedented family meeting. Before everyone, he placed the birth certificate, the handkerchief, and a photo of Phuc on the ancestral altar. He bowed 3 times and spoke. I was the one who didn't believe my younger brother. I let the woman and my nephew perish in flames and injustice. Today, I pray to our ancestors to restore Phuc's name, to carve it into our ancestral stone, to return him to the family registry, so that from now on, the dead have a place to return, and the living no longer carry this debt. The family fell silent. No one laughed, no one spoke, but everyone understood. The third soul had finally been called, and a third incense bowl would soon be placed, not to ask for blessings, but to repay a broken promise decades old. That night, the ancestral gate remained wide open until dawn, no longer locked as before. A gentle wind blew, the incense smoke rose straight, and in the middle of the courtyard, under the moonlight, there remained only a small scorch mark, the shape of a handkerchief, now turned to dust. After the family acknowledged Phuc's name in the genealogy, the entire village of Hoa Ki was enveloped in a thin mist for 3 straight days. The sky remained grey, neither sunny nor rainy. Life in the village slowed. The elders said it was a sign the ancestors were listening. The younger folk walked more solemnly. No one dared joke while passing the ancestral gate. From that day on, a third incense bowl appeared in the altar room, not placed in the center, nor to the left, but to the rear right, just beneath the old horizontal board engraved with ancestral virtue, eternal legacy. In the dim oil lamp light, the 3 incense bowls sat apart, yet their smoke mingled, like 3 fates once separated, now finding their place beside each other. It seemed as though peace had finally settled, but then something unexpected occurred. On the 7th night after placing the 3rd incense bowl, the clan elder, the one who had always led family rituals, developed a sudden fever with no known cause. He was delirious for 2 days, murmuring non-stop, I didn't mean to. I just wanted to silence her. I didn't want that baby to be born." Those words left his loved ones in shock. No one imagined that he, the guardian of the family's sacred rites, had been present the night Leon died. And not just as a witness. By the 3rd afternoon, he awoke. His eyes had changed, as if seeing through time. He requested to be taken to the ancestral house alone, though still too weak to walk steadily. No one dared stop him. They followed quietly from a distance, watching as he walked into the ancestral hall like a man heading to his own trial. He approached the center of the altar, placed his hand on the 2nd incense bowl, Leon and the child's bowl, and sat silently for a long time. Then, in a hoarse but steady voice, he spoke each word clearly, as if waiting a lifetime to say it. "That night, it was me. I lit the fire. I didn't mean to kill her. I only wanted to burn the house, to force her to leave. I thought it would be a small fire. I thought she'd run, but I didn't know someone else was inside." No one replied. A long gust of wind howled through the courtyard, as if releasing a tension held for decades. He reached up to the altar and retrieved an old bronze censer, the only surviving object from Leon's home. He had hidden it, kept it, and now returned it, placing it between the 3 incense bowls as an offering of repentance. The old bronze was rough, dented, and blackened by smoke, but in his eyes, it was priceless. Then, something extraordinary happened before everyone. As he bowed a 3rd time before the altar, the child's incense bowl cracked diagonally. The ashes did not spill. The smoke turned bright red, then extinguished, like someone exhaling after a dream too long. Little man, the young girl, suddenly pointed at the altar and said, "Grandpa." The baby is in his mother's arms now. He's not crying anymore. Everyone looked at one another, eyes glistening, but the final detail chilled them all. As the clan elder turned to leave, all 3 incense bowls, at once, leaned gently toward the censer, as if 3 souls were bowing to the man who had confessed. The incense smoke didn't rise. It twisted sideways, intertwining into 3 threads, like bloodlines that had never truly separated. That night, he wrote a letter by hand and placed it on the main altar. In it, he wrote, "I was wrong. From now on, all 3 will be honored equally. No ranks, no titles, only one truth, those of our blood, a family." 3 days later, he passed away peacefully in his sleep, still holding the scorched bronze censer. The family believed he had been forgiven, but they didn't know that the night before, someone had quietly burned a piece of paper in the courtyard. On it, only one trembling line. The 4th one wasn't me. The clan elder's funeral was held in silence. Under a steady drizzle, he was sent off as both a forgiven sinner and a steadfast leader during the family's darkest years. No drums, no ceremonial music, only steady chanting and thin trails of smoke from the 3 incense bowls, now aligned. Equal, like the souls they honored. Everything seemed to end. The guilty had confessed. The spirits had been named. The smoke-stained marks on the wall faded. But then, something strange reappeared. On the 7th night after the ritual for the clan elder, a strong wind blew. The ancestral gate, closed since the offering, burst open at midnight though no one was inside. When Mrs. Hoa, the caretaker, ran to check, she found a thin piece of paper fluttering in the yard. It carried only one sentence. "I kept it secret for 35 years. Now, if the ancestors won't accept it, the land will." No one knew what it meant. But the next morning, while repairing the old roof, a worker accidentally discovered a hidden wooden compartment between the tiles. Inside was a bundle of decaying papers. The top sheet was still readable, a copy of a land deed, and a map of property division signed by the clan elder years ago. Shockingly, one plot of land, where La Oan's house once stood, was crossed out and labeled, "Temporarily withheld, pending bloodline verification." This had never been revealed, never mentioned in any family meeting. A young priest, upon hearing the rumors, advised inviting back the old spiritual master, the one who had sensed 2 souls in one incense bowl. But he declined, saying, "The anger of the dead is easy to soothe. The hatred of the living, that's what keeps the gates of the afterlife from closing." Those words struck deep, for they all knew, if someone alive still harbored the truth, unspoken, then no spirit would ever truly rest. That evening, Mr. Kai visited old Lu, the eldest cousin in the clan. Living alone near the southern graveyard, nearly 90, with fading sight and hearing, he had long withdrawn from worldly matters. But when Mr. Kai mentioned the crossed-out land, Lu sat upright. His cloudy eyes sparkled strangely. He reached behind an old cabinet and pulled out a worn cloth pouch. Inside was a letter, folded 4 ways, the paper yellowed with age. The handwriting was firm, familiar. The clan elders. From his younger years. "Lu, keep this for me. If anyone asks, burn it. But if someone comes back to claim that land, and they belong to her, then give it. Belong to her? Who? Old Lou sighed and recounted. Back then, Leone didn't just come seeking refuge with her child. She brought a letter, handwritten by Fook, promising marriage, requesting to reserve a temporary plot for a small future home, apart from ancestral land. But the letter was torn up. No one accepted it. Instead, a strict order was issued. All dealings with outsiders are invalid. The fire that followed was no accident. It was meant to erase everything. Lou never burned the letter. He kept it, as a thread tying past to present. A reminder that no matter how high we place the ancestors, the truth cannot stay buried beneath cold ashes. That night, Mr. Kai placed the letter on the altar. But as he bowed, both candles went out. The window flew open. A strange wind burst in, lifting the altar cloth, sending ash from all 3 incense bowls swirling upward, gathering in the air. In that moment, the smoke formed a shape, half butterfly, half open hand, and then, the ancestral door, silent for days, opened again. A shadow stood outside, no face, but holding something silver. Was it a person, or a final reminder that one last secret remained unnamed? The figure at the ancestral door did not speak, did not enter. It stood silently beneath the Barrington tree, shedding its leaves. In its hand was the scorched silver necklace once found in the ashes of the first incense bowl. An object believed lost to the spirit world, now held by the living. Mr. Kai trembled and stepped forward. The figure handed him the necklace, then turned away, before disappearing down the dirt path behind the ancestral house. It spoke softly. The ancestors need not accept it, but blood cannot be washed away. That night, Mr. Kai sat alone in the altar room. On the table, beside the 3 incense bowls, lay the silver necklace, silently, like the final proof of all the truths the Nguyen family had tried for 3 generations to deny. And then, he did something no one expected. The next morning, the family gathered at the ancestral house. In the center of the altar room, the heavy genealogy book lay open. Beside it, 3 sticks of incense, a cup of rice wine, and a bundle of dry kindling. Mr. Kai didn't pray. He simply turned to the final page, once slashed, torn, now mended with tape and thread. In trembling handwriting from the night before, he had written, Nguyen T. Leone. No title, no grave, but a handful of ash. Nguyen Min, no surname, no name, but one short breath. Nguyen Van Phuc, no body, no honor, but one promise left unkept. These 3 are ancestors to someone, never recorded, never called, but they returned, seeking justice. Then, he lit the kindling. The flame started small, licking the edge of the book, then roared to life. No one stopped him, no one interfered. They only stood still, knowing this was the final ritual, one that could not be read aloud, but had to be performed. Each page of the family register crackled, turned to ash, carried away by wind through both open windows. In the fading light, the smoke from the 3 incense bowls no longer rose vertically. Instead, it spread sideways, curling into a soft ribbon, gentle and peaceful. When the flames died, Mr. Kai placed the necklace onto the ashes, gathered them into a small ceramic jar. Unlabeled, unnamed, he carried it to the backyard, placing it beneath the Barrington tree now shedding its leaves. 3 days later, the tree bloomed, out of season. That night, in a dream, little man, the child who had first seen the baby spirit, said she saw a woman in white, holding a baby, standing in the courtyard. Behind her, a man embraced them both, smiling. Together, they walked through the open wooden door, and vanished into the incense smoke. Light as the afternoon clouds. Since then, no one has heard crying at night. No shadows sat in the courtyard. No incense bowls cracked. It was as if nothing had ever happened. But no one in the family dared forget. Because in the end, what remains is not a curse, but a truth. No one is denied forever whether living or turned to ash. Just one time to be called by name is enough to let them rest in peace. Thank you for joining me through this haunting, emotional, and meaningful story. If you believe every story carries a message, then perhaps this one reminds us. Life and death may separate us, but identity, memory, and love always deserve their rightful place. Pushpin, please subscribe to the channel and share this video with anyone who has experienced loss or has ever been forgotten, so that memories can be preserved and no one must carry injustice into the next life.